Today, one man is a retired aeronautical engineer, the other a professor emeritus of sociology at San Diego State University. But during the Second World War, they were just young boys growing up in Nazi Germany.
Bomber formations would come over by the hundreds. The drone, from even that altitude, from all those engines, made my chest vibrate.
All of a sudden, there's a big blast on the other side of the street.
Like all of us, Rolf Schulz and Heinz Kubernes had no say about the world they would be born into. For them, it was in separate parts of Berlin in the early 1930s as Hitler rose to power.
Es lebe Deutschland!
In the coming years, the Nazi conquest would turn Germany into ground zero for the Allied response.
The British bombers came at night.
When Rolf Schulz was 8 years old, he found himself sheltering with family in an aunt's basement in Hamburg.
When the doors blew open, everybody began to pray and cry, and they were scared. Seeing adults being scared was new to me.
But it would become a way of life, as it was only 1940 and the attacks on the heart of Germany were just beginning.
Even today, my worst fear is to be buried in the basement, because a lot of people did.
Heinz Kubernes says much of his wartime youth was spent in basements, as his mother insisted they stay in Berlin throughout the war. But in the final days of April 1945, the 10-year-old was hunkered with some 50 others, mostly women and children, in the underground floor of their apartment building. When it suddenly appeared, it would be their tomb.
A big crack, and there's a bomb coming right through the ceiling of the basement and laying about 20, 30 feet away from us. Didn't explode.
The bomb had been dropped by a Russian aircraft as part of what would be known as the Battle of Berlin in the final days of the European War. The very next day, as Heinz ventured out to investigate a rumor of chocolate being given to children by the SS, his life was nearly taken again, this time by a Russian artillery shell.
So I'm halfway over there. The Russian artillery must have moved forward. All of a sudden, there's a big artillery blast on the other side of the street that threw me against the other side of the wall. Some soldier pulled me into the gangway, and he says, "Kid, you better stay here."
Heinz says the soldier told him to wait until the Russians were reloading and then run like hell. Meanwhile,
I was evacuated during the bombing to various parts.
Rolf Schulz's family had moved to the countryside for the latter part of the war to get away from the interest of bombers. Still, he recalls the thrill and fear of seeing swarms of American B-17s flying over toward their targets.
It was an amazing thing, and I used to think, oh, please don't drop any bombs here because I'm right down here.
These wartime experiences were taking place for both boys largely without the presence of their fathers, because the men had been drafted into the German army. In part two of our conversation, more searing images and impressions as the war intensifies around the boys before finally coming to an end.
My mother said, I was born here, we'll die here.
Berlin, late April 1945. Heinz Kubernes is about to turn 11 years old. That is, if he can survive the final major clash of Russian and German soldiers that is now bringing the fight to the interconnected basements where he and thousands of other civilians have been taking shelter.
So here come German soldiers through there. All the women were screaming, "What the heck are you doing? The war is over." You know, they don't care. Most of these guys were SS, so if the Russians catch them, they kill them anyway, so they fought to the last guy there.
Heinz says to the end, Berliners hoped they would be able to surrender to American forces, fearing Russians by perceived reputation, and for the reprisals many felt would come, including Heinz's own father, because of what Germany had done to them.
He fought in Russia for a while, and he said, if they ever come to Germany, you better watch out.
They should have gotten outside with a white flag. Instead, they hid in their basements and wherever they could hide.
While Heinz was sealed in Berlin amid the Russian advance, 13-year-old Rolf Schulz had years earlier evacuated with his mother and siblings to the German countryside, where American forces were now advancing, attracting attention.
Then the German SS shot a few rounds of mortar into the village, apparently in response to the Americans coming in with their deuces, half-ton big trucks and a tank and so on.
Suddenly, the supposed enemy became guardian.
And the American GIs grabbed us kids and dragged us under their trucks to protect us. To this day, I can hardly keep from being emotional about it because they showed an amount of humanity that I knew German soldiers were not doing to Polish kids, French kids, Russian kids, or whoever.
By May 2nd, 1945, Berlin had fallen, and Heinz, who had made it to his 11th birthday, searched for food, inevitably coming across disturbing scenes.
There were bodies laying all over the place, and I remember that the whole row of German soldiers laying there, and a lot of Russian dead. They were picking them up slowly, but the Germans that were laying there, I don't know.
Heinz Gubernis and Rolf Schulz would both not only survive, but thrive in the years ahead. The complete German surrender came on May 8, 1945. VE Day, victory in Europe. Not just a triumph for the Allies, but for two young boys and many other Germans, a new life and perspective.
You must plead guilty or not guilty.
Overnight, they all war criminals. It can't be. They were such heroes. So my hero worshipping is definitely gone.
It's a memory for me that protects me from falling into the same trap again. There's always a better solution than to go to war.